You ready? All right. I'd like to call to order the October 11th, 2018 meeting of the Santa Barbara County Local Agency Formation Commission. Mr. Clerk, can we get a roll call, please?
Commissioner Aceves.
Here.
Commissioner Geyer.
Here.
Commissioner Hartman.
Here.
Commissioner Ishkanian.
Here.
Commissioner Lavignino.
Here.
Commissioner Richardson.
Here.
Commissioner Seymour. Here. Commissioner Stark.
Here.
Commissioner Waterfield.
Here.
Commissioner Welt is absent today. Commissioner Wolf.
Here.
We're good? All right. Please stand and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic.
One nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, let's move to the approval of the minutes of the September 6, 2018 meeting. Can I get a motion, please?
So moved.
Moved and seconded. Roll call, please.
Commissioner Aceves.
Aye.
Commissioner Geyer.
Aye.
Commissioner Ishkanian. Commissioner Stark.
Aye.
Commissioner Richardson.
Aye.
Commissioner Wolf.
Aye.
Commissioner Lavignino.
Aye.
Passes unanimously.
All right, that takes us over to public comment. Now's the time for members of the public to speak on items that are not on today's agenda. Are there any requests to speak on items not on the agenda?
Chair Lavignino, no request to speak.
Okay, next item of business, approval of the consent calendar. Are there any comments or questions from the commission? Any items anybody would like to pull on the commission? Santa Barbara? No, we're all good. Are there any members of the public that wish to speak on any of the A items?
No request to speak.
Okay.
Approval.
I move approval of the
Second.
calendar.
It's been moved and seconded. Roll call, please.
Commissioner Aceves.
Aye.
Commissioner Geyer.
Aye.
Commissioner Ishkanian. Commissioner Richardson.
Aye.
Commissioner Stark.
Aye.
Commissioner Wolf.
Aye.
Commissioner Lavignino.
Aye.
Passes unanimously.
All right, rolling. Next item is change of organization, item 1. Will the clerk please read that item into the record?
Chair Lavignino, members of the commission, change of organization item number 1 is to consider recommendations regarding LAFCO file number 1803 for the La Cumbre Mutual Water Company Sphere of Influence revision and annexation to the Goleta Sanitary District, and consider adoption of a resolution that takes the actions listed on your agenda as A through D.
Okay, Mr. Hood?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Paul Hood, LAFCO Executive Officer. I have a brief PowerPoint that I will present to you, and let me get it up on the screen. Perfect. This is an application by the La Cumbre Mutual Water Company to the Goleta Sanitary District. There are actually some neighboring parcel owners that signed the application as well as the La Cumbre Mutual Water Company. So the application is by property owners, by petition. The area comprises 5 parcels comprising 8.35 acres. Proposal is adjacent to portions of some roads that I'm not going to read, but they're located on the map. And it's in the unincorporated area of the county of Santa Barbara, southwesterly of the city of Santa Barbara. The purpose of the proposal is to annex the La Cumbre Mutual Water Company headquarters, and it also has a storage reservoir on site so that a sewer main can be extended, and then to abandon the on-site septic system that is located within the buffer zone close to the drinking supply reservoir, as I mentioned. The State Water Resources Control Board has determined that the on-site storage facility does not meet state drinking water regulations unless the existing septic tank is abandoned and the site is connected to a public wastewater system. So the property owner, mutual water company owners, approached the Goleta Sanitary District about including the water company headquarters within the district boundaries for sewer service. 2 of the 5 parcels are vacant, and the additional parcels are included to make the annexation contiguous to the boundaries of the Goleta Sanitary District. All of the property owners signed the application. The entire area is outside of the sphere of influence. So it's a little hard to see, but the map that I provided to you, vicinity map, is included in your agenda packet, and it's listed, shown on the screen. Again, it's a little hard to see. These are the 5 parcels. The parcel on the, let's see if I can make this work. Parcel on the south side. Sorry, Shane. It does not show up on the screen, but the parcel on the south side, the lower end of the screen, is the La Cumbra Water Company site. The land use within the area is improved residential, vacant residential, and the homeowners association, as they refer to the La Cumbra Water District headquarters. No changes in land use would result from nor be facilitated by this boundary change. The parcels are large enough in area and served by existing or future septic systems, but are too small to be subdivided below the 1.8 minimum parcel size. County of Santa Barbara zoning is shown single-family exclusive residential. The site has a conditional use permit for the La Cumbra Mutual Water Company. There would be no requirement to hook into the Goleta Sanitary District facilities. The La Cumbra Mutual Water Company will pay for the extension of lines to the site down the street that would go past the additional 4 parcels, and they would be required to pay the fees, the La Cumbra District, for the extension of the line, and if the additional parcels need to connect, they would pay their proportionate share of the bonds or any outstanding debt that is required of all of the properties within the Goleta Sanitary District. Environmental determination, categorically exempt. Went over this with Bill. There's a couple of sections of CEQA, section 15303A and 15319B, that apply new construction or annexation of existing facilities, and the exemption would be approved by your commission, assuming you approve it, and we'll file a notice of exemption with the clerk's office. The district has provided a plan for services as required by Cortese-Knox-Hertzberg Act, and they have also indicated how far the extension would be, 1,200 linear feet, probably more than you needed to know, about an 8-inch sewer main that would be installed along the intervening street in front of the vacant and residential parcels. We have consent because the landowners all signed the application. Property owners have consented to waive the conducting authority proceedings because we have 100% consent, and so the annexation can proceed without a protest hearing. Seems like, in my concluding comments, seems like a logical extension of the Goleta Sanitary District boundaries, and the State Water Resources Control Board really has determined that this should be annexed. And so that concludes my comments. And if you have any questions, I'd be happy to respond.
Right.
Commissioner Seves?
Thank you. Mr. Hood, regarding the financing, the property owners do not have to hook up unless they want to.
That's correct.
And if they do, did you say they're going to have to pay their share of the bond if a bond is taken out to make this connection?
No, I'm sorry, that was confusing. Any outstanding bonds or indebtedness for the entire district is shared proportionally by the owners of property that's within the district. There's many property owners that are served by the Goleta Sanitary District. If the intervening parcels decide they want to be connected to the sewer system, they would pay their proportional share, just like every other property owner within the district boundaries. And it's not the proportion that is used to extend the sewer line, the 1,200 linear feet, 8-inch main. That would be paid for by La Cumbra Mutual Water Company. And they would just be, they would pay connection fees and any outstanding debt and that would be charged to any of the, property owners on the same proportion.
Okay. And what exactly are the Goleta Sanitary District customers going to pay for? You said they're going to share cost?
I'm not sure exactly what the bonds would be, but if there is any bonds that are outstanding that are charged to every property owner within the district, the additional parcels would also be charged the same rate. Could be, for instance, could be for the expansion or updating of the wastewater treatment site or something like that, that the property owners would pay proportional share.
Okay.
I think the Goleta Sanitary District fairly recently, in the last couple of years, expanded its wastewater sewage treatment plant.
Well, they did, and they charged accordingly.
Right.
And the reason why I'm asking the question is because not only they charge accordingly, but they've never stopped charging.
Oh, okay.
And so my question is who's going to pay for it, and how long are they going to pay for it, and then is there an end game at it? Because I'd hate to see what happened with the sanitary district where they did the upgrade. It was a multi-million-dollar upgrade, and it was really, really nice. But the customers, I should say I'm one of them, is still paying for it. So, again, I'm not totally clear on that as to who's paying for it and how long they're going to pay for it.
Commissioner Stark?
Yes, I have I think a straightforward question. Is this property in Hope Ranch? The water company headquarters, I think, is in Hope Ranch. Is that correct?
I believe so. And the map, the map indicates where the headquarters are.
And so my question is, is the Hope Ranch Owners Association have a position? Do they support this? I guess that's what
I'm not sure if they do. I can't imagine that they wouldn't support it since it's a requirement that the water service be continued. And I did look that up online. And as far as the connections that the water company has, I believe it's around 1,200 with a maximum service area of about 1,500 residences. So I would assume that if they want to continue to get service from the district, that they would support that.
That would be my recollection is that, look, the primary customer of the LaCoumbra Water Company is Hope Ranch, and they may have some other customers, but you assume they wouldn't be here if the association didn't consent to it.
Yeah, and I think that they get their water supply from groundwater and from state water from the city of Santa Barbara.
That's my understanding.
Yeah, that's my recollection from researching that question.
Commissioner Wolf?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yes, this is in Hope Ranch. It's unincorporated county, and it happens to be in the 2nd District. And I think this is a really good proposal. I want to thank you, Mr. Hood and staff, for moving this forward. It wasn't very straightforward, but you got us to the end point, and I think this is something that we should move on. And with that, I'm going to recommend that the Commission approve option 1, which is the approval of the proposal and resolution, which is Exhibit E.
I'll second it.
And then we just had a second out here, too.
Who was the second, please?
It was Craig.
Okay. Commissioner Geyer, second. We have a motion and a second. Roll call, please. Is there any more comment? We good? Okay. Is there any public comment on the item?
No request to speak.
Okay.
Could I
Yep.
just ask one
Wait,
question?
Commissioner Seves?
Based on Mrs. Stark's question, does the Hope Ranch Association have to weigh in on it since it's in their sphere?
No.
My understanding is that, and I live in I'm sorry. Let's let the person that knows answer the
If
question.
you could identify yourself too, please.
Honorable Commissioners, my name is Mark Lloyd from L&P Consultants. I represent LaCoumbra Mutual Water Company in this application. The Hope Ranch Association is a customer of LaCoumbra Mutual Water Company, and LaCoumbra Mutual Water Company provides water to the association's properties for landscape purposes. All of the owners within Hope Ranch are customers of the Lacumba Mutual Water Company. So there is not a pass-through, if you will, through the Hope Ranch Association to Lacumba. They both act as independent entities, one dealing with its customers, the other one dealing with their association members. And I'm happy to answer any other questions that you may have.
So that would be a no?
That would be a no, that we do not need any approval of the homeowners association. They're just one of our customers. They don't represent the other 1,200 customers.
Thanks.
I have a question. I'm sorry, I don't know the answer to it. But the board of Lacumba, is it elected? Is it appointed, or how do they serve?
It's an elected board.
They're elected board, so they're a special district.
Yes.
They're land.
Yeah, the association is
All right. Each landowner has a vote.
Thank you for being here.
Thank you.
All right, I think we have a motion and a second. We're ready for a roll call.
Commissioner Aceves,
Yes.
Commissioner Guyer,
Aye.
Commissioner Iskanian, Commissioner Richardson,
Aye.
Commissioner Stark,
Aye.
Commissioner Wolf,
Aye.
Commissioner Lavigno.
Aye.
Passes unanimously.
All right, that takes us to business item number 1. Will the clerk please read that item into the record?
Chair Lavigno, members of the board, business item number 1, the recommendations are to consider review of the Commission's agriculture and open space policies and provide direction to staff.
Okay, Mr. Hood?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I have, again, a PowerPoint. Try and be brief on this. It's kind of a little bit on the long side, but is that showing on the screen? Oh, good. Thank you, Mike. Several months ago, the commission asked that I come back to you with a review of our agricultural and open space policies. The commission will recall that back in April, we reviewed an open letter from the Environmental Defense Center. And then at the following meeting on May 3rd, I brought back an item called the State of the Art on Ag Preservation. It's a LAFCO white paper that was prepared in coordination with the American Farmland Trust. Both of these documents prompted the commission to ask me to take a look at our policies encouraging the conservation of prime ag land and open space that are contained currently in the Commissioner Handbook, and also are available on the Commission's website. I'm going to go through some of the statutory authority because the Cortese-Knox Act, which is the enabling statute for LAFCOs, has a number of sections that encourage the preservation of agricultural and open space land, specifically Section 56-300, that each says that each commission shall establish policies and exercise its powers pursuant to this part in a manner that encourages and provides planned, well-ordered, efficient urban development patterns with appropriate consideration for preserving open space and agricultural lands. Section 56-300 says among the purposes of the commission are discouragement of urban sprawl and preserving open space and ag lands, agricultural lands. And one of the objectives of the commission is to make studies and obtain and furnish information about reasonable growth. One of the factors that the commission looks at is approving and disapproving proposals that could reasonably be expected to induce, facilitate, or lead to the conversion of existing open space and agricultural land, and develop policies directing development away from existing prime agricultural land towards areas that contain non-prime agricultural land, and then development of existing vacant or non-prime lands within existing jurisdictions such as infill would be encouraged rather than annex or include areas that are prime ag land within the sphere of influence of a city. So agricultural resources and the sphere of influence, definitely when we have a request to amend the sphere of influence, needs to consider the effect that it might have on prime ag land. And as I mentioned, there was a breakout session at the LAFCO conference. We attended that. Some of the commissioners and staff attended that. And so now I'm ready to bring back a policy after this staff report. I have included copies of the ag policies from San Luis Obispo and Ventura LAFCOs. And in determining spheres of influence, again, we need to look very closely at the preservation of ag land and developing policies that would direct development away from prime ag land towards areas that are infill. So I've included, and I don't think you want me to go through all of the Santa Barbara LAFCO's policies, but I have included a copy of our policies in the staff report, and with emphasis on looking at the website and going through these. So the commission may want me to go over these in detail at some point in the future. I'm looking for direction on how you want me to approach this. And I could definitely do a strikeout and red line, at some future meeting, maybe in a month or two after the holidays. And you could make comments on those at that time. So in conclusion, I think that we do need to take a look at the policies. We have an application pending from the city of Lompoc that we need to make sure that our ag policies are in place and up to date, and it could provide the commission with some direction on how to process applications such as the one that's pending, and definitely come back and approve that at some future date. Some of the options might also be to establish an ad hoc committee to take a look at our existing policies, or you could just direct me to come back and looking at the policies of neighboring LAFCOs, the Cal LAFCO white paper, the Environmental Defense Center, and insert or strike out some of the current policies. Last time the commission amended the policies was in 2007. So they would probably need to be updated to reflect some of the current law and give some direction to you on processing applications. So I'm happy to receive any comments from you and requesting direction on how to approach this.
Questions of the commission?
I have a question.
Commissioner Waterfield?
Yes. As we all know, our communities are completely different when it comes to annexations with different needs. In my particular area where I live, I have a hospital that is completely engulfed, and their basic need would be to go into ag land should that ag land loaner want to come out of the Williamson Act. Is it still a 10-year wait to come out of a Williamson Act?
I guess there could be two types of Williamson Act. One is a 10-year, one is a 20-year. And the notice of non-renewal is not like you just say, I want to end the Williamson Act. Mm-hmm. It's like year by year. If it's a 10-year cancellation, it takes 10 years to get out of the Williamson Act contract. 20 years is the same way. So it's not, because you need the land, the property owners need to plan ahead for when they need it and file the notice of non-renewal. And the purpose of being in the Williamson Act, not only to preserve ag land, but it also is a break on property taxes.
Absolutely,
because they're not charged as much.
So once an ag loaner files to relieve themselves from the Williamson Act and they decide this is not what they wanted to do, can they cancel that process at that point, or do they have to continue on?
I think they need to continue on. I'll check with legal counsel, but my understanding is that it's a 10-year takes, it's 9, 8, 7,
Right. Because
before you
I
can
know that's
cancel.
what we did with the Enos Ranch property that we have right now. It took a 10-year process to get that done. And I couldn't remember if they were trying to pull in or pull out again in regards to that. But how will this affect the areas for the Marion Hospital and for Allen Hancock, which, you know, they don't have any type of infill around them? The only place they can go is across the freeway, underneath the freeway into ag land. Will what we do here stop that process for either one, Marion or for Allen Hancock?
Well, I think, again, these are policy guidelines that give direction to the commission. I think that, school districts are treated differently. It's been my experience that they are not subject to the same planning and zoning requirements that the public is involved with. I'm not sure about the hospital.
Okay, and I'm not sure if junior colleges fall under that as well.
Yeah, I'm not sure.
So, yeah.
But I think that, I know I've run into some situations where the state architect approves development rather than the
Right.
county planning or city planning for schools.
Okay.
Commissioner Seves?
Mr. Hood, you mentioned Lompoc has an application, and I haven't seen it, and I can't say I know anything about it. But is their application consistent with our current policy? Because what you're saying is we have a pending application, but now we're talking about making changes. Are we making changes because it's inconsistent, or is their application consistent with our current policy?
No, I believe, in answer to your question, that the application is outside the sphere of influence and contains prime agricultural land. So it's, at this point, it's inconsistent with our current policies. And so this same application, the larger acreage, was looked at by the commission in 1998 and denied by the commission as far as the sphere of influence at that time. Then some direction was given, it came back to the commission in 2007, where there was a Burton Road annexation that was filed with the commission and approved, that was also agricultural land, but it was not prime agricultural land, and it was also within fairly close to the existing city limits. And there was an agreement between the Mission Hills Community Services District that LAFCO was more interested in having that area be developed and not the pending Bailey Avenue annexation that has been refiled with the commission. And it won't be coming back to your commission until there is some agreement between the county and the city on what should happen on the site, and if it's consistent with the county general plan, comprehensive plan. And then there would be a requirement for maps and legal descriptions and a property tax exchange that would need to take place between the county and the city, the same way that Summit View Homes, if you recall that situation that went on for 6 to 8 to 10 months, would be required. But the main issue is the sphere of influence that was denied back in 1998.
Now, was Burton Mesa prime ag land or not prime ag?
I'm not sure. I think it was. Yeah, I'm not sure it was actively farmed. It was zoned for ag.
Commissioner Stark?
Yes, I actually have two small suggestions. The first is in addition to the policies that you mentioned, Ventura, Monterey, I think, I might suggest you take a look at the San Diego County, which tends to have a thoroughly worked out series of policies. It may not, be good, but they tend to be modern and updated. And the second thing that I would request staff to look into is to check our policies against the best practices that are listed in the LAFCO white paper. I think we ought to have best practices, particularly with respect to encouraging consensual agreements by the affected entities and making sure that the entities are all encouraged to reach an amicable solution in these matters. And second, perhaps a listing of acceptable mitigations in the event that there's a proposal that has an unavoidable effect on ag land, and you want to mitigate that loss in some fashion. I think we have to have some flexibility to taper the mitigations to the circumstances.
Commissioner Geyer.
Yes, I'd just like to express that I support our executive officer and council to create a red line version. They have the most expertise on the up-to-date relevant regulations, and then bring it back to the commission for comment.
Okay.
And I'll be departing.
Okay. I think we do have public comment before we make any recommendations. So, Mr. Allen?
Chair Levinino, we have 3 requests to speak. We'll start with Jim Thrope, to be followed by Janelle Osborne.
Thank you, Commission and members. My name is Jim Troop. I'm the new city manager for the city of Lompoc, and I'm going to go through as quickly as possible. I just found about the meeting last night, so I didn't prepare as well as I usually do. I was hired in part by the city council to try and figure out what's going on with the city of Lompoc and how I and the others can fix what's going on down there. A big issue is housing. Prices and rents are more than most of the citizens can afford. I'm going to give you some data here. Only 46% of the homes in the city are owner occupied. The remainder are all out of town investors that have bought up, and as soon as a home comes through, they're bought up and the prices are going up. I can tell you, when I moved there, I had a hard time finding a place to live. It's almost next to impossible. 30%, this was very large, 30% of all our multifamily housing is low income, which then pulls that off our property tax rolls, yet we still have the requirement to serve all those residents with police, fire, and other services, parks, library. So that also is a detriment to the city. City's classified as a disadvantaged city. City has almost 25% poverty level. It's huge. 70% of the people who live in the city that are employed have to commute to their jobs outside the city. So that's about 13,000 people, most of them headed south on that little Highway 1, some on 46 every day, back and forth to the job. So our ability to shorten greenhouse gases it's not working too well, and we've had 3 deaths on Highway 1 already in the last 2 weeks. It's just more and more people on this little road that wasn't meant for that. The process here needs to look at not just one size fits all, because unlike the other cities in the county, Lompoc is different. Good ways, bad ways, it is different. It's off to the side, it's by itself. It has to be treated in a different manner than other cities that are out there. One of the things that Lompoc does not want in any way, shape, or form is any kind of out-of-control growth, but rather the fair, reasonable, and well-planned growth so that the citizens of Lompoc can have the same services, benefits, and quality of life as many of the other cities have. As you know, like I said, we're at a disadvantaged, impoverished city. We don't have that traffic flow off the 101 to help us out. You have to want to go to Lompoc, and it's tough to have the ends meet. One of the things real quick was, if I have time, is the one provision in 5601 does say that there should be affected by the logical formation and modification of the boundaries of local agencies with preference granted to accommodating some additional growth within or through the expansion of the boundaries of these local agencies which can best accommodate and provide necessary governmental services and housing for persons and families of all incomes in the most efficient manner feasible. It goes on a little bit more. So there's more to it that I think we all need to talk about, because we are at that point. I was trying to get, before I came up here, what is our vacancy rate is in single digits, and it's tough on our people that are living there. And so I hope, thank you, and I hope to, come back and be part of this discussion later.
Thank you for being here.
Janelle Osborne, and then we'll hear from Claire Weinman, who's our final speaker.
Janelle Osborne, Mayor Pro Tem for the City of Lompoc. I find it interesting that this was brought forward as a result of an application brought forward by the City of Lompoc. It feels punitive given the number of times Lompoc is mentioned in the statement about why these recommendations should be considered. You mentioned 1998. That was 20 years ago, and that annexation was an entire strip of Bailey Avenue. This is 2 individual parcels being looked at by individuals who no longer want to farm, and in fact, one of those parcels is no longer farmed. It is a stagnant piece of property that is just growing occasionally sweet peas, or, you know, if somebody rents it and they're at the point that they're dismantling their greenhouses. They have moved their farming overseas. They no longer farm, and they desire to be inside the community and develop. If you move forward on changing the wording that says a community is required for infill, you need to factor in that the city of Lompoc is already a very small square footage of 11 square miles for 40,000 population. Our infill availability is very minimal. If we were going to infill, there are many buildings and businesses that would need to sell out for some of the larger entities that other cities already have the benefit of having. We don't have a brand new large Target. We don't have a brand new large bank. We don't have a brand new large dealership that all drive that tax base and those property taxes and the sales tax and the employment, because we don't have large enough spaces to accommodate for those kinds of things. So demanding that we have infill, requiring us to prove it as a low-income community that's already stressful on us, it's adding another burden. Last but not least, you have this concept that you are a checks and balances. That is your mandate. We are not looking to do land grabs. What we are looking to do is grow in a modicum of approved ways that our community wants to see happen and that our residents want to see happen. So we asking you to maintain that role, work in partnership with us, and if you make any large changes, that you have us at the table. We are the 3rd largest city in the county, and we do not have a seat at LAFCO. We are not part of the conversation. We aren't driving this discussion, and yet you're making decisions that impact us. I ask that all cities be given the opportunity to review these changes and give feedback, potentially participate in ad hoc if you put it forward, before these considerations are put forward and made decisions on. It's really important that we all work, as you said, in partnership, be respectful, but for over 40 years, I have looked at the pattern and seen that somehow Lompoc keeps losing out in these matters and being told we can't grow. But we accept that we're an ag community. We embrace the ag in our community, but at the same time, we can't just be ag. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
May I ask the speaker a question?
Sure, Commissioner Stark.
It's real simple. Do you work for the city of Lompoc, or are you a resident, or both, I guess?
I am an elected official.
Okay.
For the city council, and I'm a resident, and I actually live on the edge of town near ag, so I happily chose to buy in the community. My husband and I moved here from Texas. I grew up in ag, and as a result chose Lompoc because of its environment. I really like that.
So you're on the city council?
I am on the city council.
Congratulations. Thank you very much.
Sure.
Claire Weinman. Then we're going to hear from Jim Mosby as our final speaker.
Good afternoon. My name is Claire Weinman. I'm the president of the Grower Shipper Association of Santa Barbara and San Luis Obispo counties. The association is supportive of policies conducive to long-term vitality of agriculture. This prime farmland is a finite resource. To be able to have a Mediterranean climate, have flat topography, and a groundwater aquifer, that's a very, very unique resource worldwide. And so we're very lucky and privileged to have that here on the Central Coast. As many of you know, agriculture is a major economic driver, both in terms of income and employment in Santa Barbara County. And we really appreciate the role of thoughtful land use planning to reduce, or whenever possible, to prevent predictable land use conflicts. Wanted to speak to a few conceptual points. First, that we do see agriculture and open space as related, but also as separate items. We need to help agriculture be successful. It needs to be recognized as a place of work and as an industry. I think one of the colorful quotes is, "Don't put us in a snow globe." So we want to articulate that as we're considering this and making sure that we still give them the flexibility to be working lands as well. One of the other points that I wanted to raise as well, and heard the discussion earlier, is the balance when it comes to extension of services. We want it to, one of the things that we work on is the availability and affordability of drinking water and wastewater treatment, especially for kind of unincorporated and rural areas. So we know that's something that we certainly don't want it to induce growth, but it also presents a challenge when it comes to housing and other land uses, including schools. One of the things that we think would be great is if we did have more of a thoughtful consideration of school placement. We know there's the factors that influence that, but that often results in conflicts with agricultural land uses. So in my perfect world, would be able to incorporate that in a thoughtful and comprehensive way. So we appreciate your consideration of this item, and we look forward to actively engaging in this process in the coming months and years. Thank you.
Jim Mosby.
I again was noticed this late last night by our city manager. My name is Jim Mosby. I'm a city councilman from Lompoc. In hearing some of your discussion, there's some items I think that you need to verify a little more closely. One is the definition of prime ag land. What is the definition of prime ag land? And the LUDC, it's a little bit vague, and some of it has to be looked at with the willingness of the person who owns the land to farm. And I think there should be a little bit more weight put on the fact of whether somebody is willing to farm or no longer wants to farm their own land. The LUDC, I think the older version of it has a little portion of it. I think it has a valuation component. How many dollars did you make on that land? I think it's an arcane number, a couple $100 or something like that. But you might want to look and see what the definition of prime ag land is, because if you look around, if it's a valuation component, some of the garages in the community probably have more dollars worth of product growing in them, not legally such, but would be qualified under prime ag land. It's not just the ability to put a seed in the ground and make something grow. And I do believe that it needs to be a heavier component of the willingness of the person who owns it. One of the things you should look at is the new school buffer policy that's coming in. I think it's a quarter-mile buffer that's going on that. But I think that should also determine, because it does limit spray applications. Being a farmer myself, I think I'm the only certified organic land in the Lompoc Valley, understanding the component of whether it can spray or not spray, and whether that would determine something to truly be prime ag land, or if it's a component that would reduce its ability to be qualified as prime ag. Currently, the city of Lompoc is at a negative growth rate. I believe we tore down a house last year, so we actually went backwards. Currently, we have no new housing starts in our community. And it brings back the point about infill. And to just use that verbiage about infill and why there just could be numbers on a piece of paper. But you need to look about the feasibility of infill. Just because a parcel is qualified as infill to develop, is that parcel feasibly able to be developed? And in our case, many of the properties were purchased at the high side, and it is no longer economically feasible to turn a profit to build these houses. So it should be a qualifier as well, not just randomly said infill. And with that, I think it's important as well, besides protecting ag land, the federal government currently pays for over 30 million acres to not be farmed. 30 million acres to not be farmed. While I appreciate ag, myself, I own over 1,000 acres of ag or involved in of agriculture in the state of California. I well understand the need for ag, but I also understand about protecting people. And in the case of Lompoc and understanding where we are right now, it is no longer sustainable to live there. Our housing prices are up. Affordable housing is disappearing, and we need to get that machine going again for housing and development. And we need to look not only at the infill, but the ability to expand and increase our housing starts. Thank you.
That concludes public comment, and I would note for the record that Commissioner Geyer has left the meeting, and so Commissioner Seymour is now the voting member.
Welcome aboard, Commissioner Seymour. All right. So do we have any comments or questions from the commission? Commissioner Stark.
I have a quick. My impression is that prime ag land is defined in Knox Cortese Hertzberg, and we're required to use essentially that definition. I assume we could have supplements to it, but we can't be in conflict with that definition. Is that correct?
That's correct. The prime agricultural land is defined in Government Code Section 56064, and it talks about productive land, $400 per acre for 3 of the 5 previous calendar years. but there's subsections A through E that define prime agricultural land in the Cortese-Knox-Hertzberg Act. So we're required to use that definition.
Thank you.
So basically, every piece of property in Santa Barbara County would be considered prime ag. I mean, $400.
Only if it's zoned for agriculture.
Right. Okay. Every zoned piece is prime ag. Any other questions, comments, Commissioner Wolf?
Thank you, Chair. You know, I think just going back to the original question, I think this is a statutory obligation that we have as LAFCO to ensure that our policies are up to date and reflect current standards. And I understand that Lompoc was mentioned, but I don't think that we should base our discussion on what might possibly happen. As I understand it, that the application is incomplete. The fact remains is that as I've looked at our policy and compared it with the information from the white paper and other counties, I do think that we need to look at our own policy and update it, and if nothing else, to clarify it. I think the letter that we received from the EDC, which which was signed by the County Farm Bureau, Claire Weinman, who just spoke, and many others, environmentalists, farmers, planning association folks, noted that there are some discrepancies and inconsistencies in our policy. I just think that we need to move forward and clean it up and make it up to date. So in my opinion, the question is, how do we do it? Do we give that task to our to Mr. Hood, or is it best to have an ad hoc committee? And I guess I think that's where we should focus on if the other members are in agreement. I don't have a preference. What I do know is that everyone who spoke here today just said that they were noticed about this meeting last night, and I think whatever we do, be it an ad hoc or Mr. Hood coming back to us, we have to make sure that this is broadly noticed, and make sure that we get input before or at the same time that it's brought back to us, because obviously we have a lot of people in the community, in the county, that are interested in this. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Mr. Hood, do you have any comments on that? Because I was kind of tossing the same thing around in my head about how to deal with it.
Well, the notices, we have an agenda notice mailing list that goes out to a large amount of people, and the notice went out for this commission meeting over 2 weeks ago. We were gone for
I've talked to Mr. Allen about this already, and he's going to go back and relook at who else might need to be on the list. But I do know the notice went out at the right amount of time.
Right.
What I'm more curious about is what's your preference for, or the commission's preference of whether we go to an ad hoc, because I do believe that this is something, and we probably need to talk about a timetable here. Of first off, my preference is you do bring back something that, in the long run, that is redlined and what the changes are, but those changes have to have the input of all interested parties. So,
well, Mr. Chairman,
is it?
Yeah, I think I'm sorry, I don't want to interrupt you.
No,
I would prefer, and the reason I presented all of the information today is because this is what we have to deal with. This did not single out the city of Lompoc, because when we started this process, it was in April and May for the open letter and the white paper from Cal LAFCO. And so at that time, you gave me direction to come back with a review of the ag and open space policies. So it's taken several months. The application from the city of Lompoc was only filed within the last month, 6 weeks or so, and it's not complete by any means. So the only reason I bring that up is because it is an example of how policies could help in reviewing applications that involve prime agricultural land. It's not singling out the city, it's just that we just happen to have an application that was filed that I didn't know was going to come in back in April. So I would prefer, if the commission agrees, that I do take a first stab at this and come back with a, red line strikeout version that you can take a look at. And then if I'm missing something, potentially assign an ad hoc committee made up of, staff and commissioners to look at it and see if I've missed anything, or if the commission wants to add something, and then bring it back to the full commission for consideration and comment.
Okay, well, as soon as you would get that original red line strike through done, if there's a way for us to be able to post that on our website, that the community
Absolutely.
could take a look at that, so they'd be prepared to comment on it when we held our meeting before we came back, that would be helpful. Commissioner Hartman.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Commissioner Stark suggested that we look at not only the counties that neighbor us, Ventura and SLO, but also San Diego, as well as the white paper policies. And then the conference we attended also had some other ideas that conference presenters offered, as well as suggesting that Napa and Sonoma, some of our benchmark counties, also have policies. So my concern is that if we jump right directly to a red line version, that we really don't have an opportunity to discuss the policy options and look at the different ways that they've been implemented through policies in these different counties. So I just wonder if there isn't a prior step, or if at least in a red line version we could see an accompanying paper that lays out the options that you considered, Mr. Hood.
Okay. I just want to piggyback on that because it made me think for a second that I don't think this is something we're going to get done by next meeting or the meeting after that. So my question is, this is something, I mean, we haven't changed it since when? 07? Okay.
Correct.
So for people, whether or not that application is complete, incomplete, or as they're working on it, it becomes complete while we're going through this process, or if somebody else comes in with an application that is deemed complete between now and the completion of this process, where do we stand on something like that?
I think we apply the current policies until they're changed. And the state law, I mean, it's not that we just develop these in a vacuum, because the state law is pretty definitive as far as, where development should take place. Yeah.
Well, and that was kind of what I wanted the folks from Lompoc to also know, is that, for us, LAFCO was created to take a hard look at going into any ag lands, prime ag lands, and try to prevent sprawl. That doesn't mean that, I think anywhere in Santa Barbara County that you would look to do an annexation, you're going to run into that. That's not to say an annexation would never happen. It's just something that this board, that's the decision-making process that this board's charged with undertaking. So, all right, Mr. Commissioner Aceves.
Thank you. Let me start off by saying the EDC letter that we received on March 16, 2018 mentions Lompoc. You mentioned Lompoc again today. I get really uncomfortable thinking that we're making Lompoc as the poster child over this when it really shouldn't be. I don't know when that government code was changed, but to say that ag land with $400, I think it was referenced in a comment that there's a lot of ag opened up now where they're making more than $400. And they're making more than $400 a night if we're talking about the same ag. I really think that this requires a lot more input from the community. I think we should form an ad hoc committee, have many public meetings, north and south. We should also have LAFCO review that policy, see if there are other communities that are currently in the same situation with their back up against the wall dealing with $400 parcels, so that we can, and I don't know what was covered in the conference, I didn't go, but maybe bring that information into the ad hoc committee process during the public comments. and then bring it to us at the various decision points to move forward. But I think it's not something we can rush into. I'd hate to see this be burdened on Mr. Hood to come back with a red line version without substantial public comment, not only from our constituents, but also this commission, to be able to direct where we should go with it. Times have changed, and definitions have changed, and I think we have to see where that puts us. So I would suggest that, I don't know if we're agendized to do it today, but maybe at the next meeting, we agendize to form an ad hoc committee and identify members of this commission to serve on it, and also make sure that we reach out to different segments of the community to serve on this committee, and make it a true public process to vet out the issue and come up with a reasoned decision.
Commissioner Shikanian.
Well, I think we have to get back to basics about the importance of the sphere of influence as our primary consideration. And when you have a city boundary, urban environment abutting agriculture, it's very painful. Mr. Mosby brought up something about you have some development inside your ag area, and then you have spraying, which gives people asthma, and near a school, unhealthy. Immediately, any urban environment takes precedence over ag because human health and well-being takes precedence. And so that has to be weighed against the various problems of impacted growth of the urban environment. But being acquainted with the development over the last few decades of Ventura County, if you're watching Ventura County, please forgive me if I say I'm not horribly impressed with how they've managed it, although they tried. They tried the greenbelt boundaries, and it's relentless. The growth is relentless. And take a look at San Fernando Valley. I remember when that was grazing land and such things. So I just want to say that I think the issue, to go back to basics, is to respect that sphere of influence, because once that is there, annexation seems to be inevitable as it encroaches, and the county overall appears to be losing out in terms of its ownership and income and everything, and jurisdiction as the urban population grows. I don't have the answer either. I'm just saying I think there's primary concerns that should always be front and center for LAFCO.
All right, kind of looking for direction on whether or not Mr. Aceves is, I guess that's something we need to bring back anyway. We can't really, we're not agendized to talk about that. So let's, so the business item is to consider review of the policy and provide direction to staff. I'm not sure at this point where we're going to go with this. So Commissioner Aceves.
I'd make a motion that staff return at our next meeting with additional limited research as to what options we have, but also agendize it so that we can form an ad hoc committee to move forward.
I'll second that.
Is there any comment on the motion? Commissioner Stark.
That would give us the flexibility to determine the future direction, both as to the process that we're going to employ, including any outreach that we might make, as well as substantive sideboards, if possible or necessary, on the substance of what we're considering. Either one, we have the flexibility to do that. Is that the intent? That sounds good to me.
Commissioner Shikanian.
Well, when you involve the outreach, it should have to be very carefully balanced, or you will get one interest group dominating the various subcommittees, so they would have to be very carefully screened.
Mr. Chair, if I might, I was not suggesting, my understanding is that a subcommittee of the commission consists of commissioners and staff, and that there would be a decision make as to who to include in the process. I was not thinking that we consider other members on that committee at this time.
Well, if I could, my suggestion was to have an ad hoc committee conduct a public process, which would involve everybody to come forward so that we can give, through staff, a recommendation of where to move
But you're
forward.
talking about an ad hoc committee of members of this commission.
Yes.
Then that would then go out and hold a public meeting so you could get public input.
Yes.
Okay, so the members of the public would not be sitting on the ad hoc subcommittee?
No.
Great, okay, that's what I was,
Mr. Chair.
okay. Commissioner Richardson.
And that would come after the research that Paul did on the issue, what redlined?
No.
Not red line, just research.
No, he
Just
can do some research, but obviously the whole research will be conducted after the public process.
His input, though, to the decision-making by the ad hoc committee should be one of the prime things we would
He's
look
going
at.
to be part of that process.
Yeah, but we're asking him to contribute to that process.
Yes.
Okay.
He's not excluded.
Santa Barbara, how are we?
Good.
Okay, very good. Okay, so we have a motion and a second. Can we get a roll call, please?
Commissioner Aceves.
Aye.
Commissioner Seymour.
Aye.
Commissioner Iskanian. Commissioner Richardson.
Aye.
Commissioner Stark.
Aye.
Commissioner Wolf.
Aye.
Commissioner Lavanino.
Aye.
Passes unanimously.
I feel sorry for who has to go after Commissioner Seymour with that. Aye. I'm glad it's not me. Yes, sir. All right. Two
Either
votes
go
for
up
his
the
good
scale
eye.
or down the scale.
Oh, okay. All right. I am jealous. Okay. So this takes us to information item 1. Mr. Clerk, can you please read it into the roll and into the record?
Chad Lavanino, members of the board. Information item 1, the recommendation is to receive and file a report on the 2018 Cal LAFCO Annual Conference, Tenaya Lodge in Yosemite, October 3 through 5, 2018.
Mr. Hood.
Mr. Chair,
Commissioner Wolf.
I'm sorry to interrupt. I'm going to have to leave, and Commissioner Hartman will be taking my place as a voting member.
Great. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
All right, Mr. Hood.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. Staff and several commissioners attended the Cal LAFCO conference last week. We wish they could have chosen a more appropriate place than Yosemite. It was hard going there for 3 days, but we endured and we had a good conference.
Riverside was all booked up, huh?
My time is up. Okay. I just want to go through and the commissioners and staff that attended, will, I think, agree that this was a very, very good conference. I've been to several of these, as you know, over the years, and it was much more interactive than most of the conferences we've attended and held in the past. The mobile workshop was particularly interesting, where we got to look at all of the tree mortality impacts in the forest and in the state. And we drove out to Bass Lake and looked around. We left at 7:15 in the morning, but we got back at about 11:30, and there's thousands and thousands, millions of trees that are, the beetle, bark beetle, and the fires have really had a significant impact. And there's really no way to solve that without a significant expense. And the fire dangers, even around the conference site were stunning, because there was dead trees for miles and miles of acreage going into Tenaya Hall. The conference, I thought, was good. There was talk about disaster preparedness and how LAFCO is getting involved. There's been, not only Santa Barbara and Goleta, but Sonoma County and San Diego and Butte, the Orville Dam situation, and LAFCOs are involved in terms of public services, not directly involved, but reviewing fire district, municipal service reviews. And we had a couple of meetings on municipal service reviews. We had some roundtables that were very good. That the coastal region that we are included in has some very interesting situations that they're dealing with, not only with ag land, but with other LAFCO responsibilities. And the ag preservation section that Commissioner Hartman talked about was, I thought, a very good session as well. Then the brainstorming session on in a perfect world, what would LAFCO be doing? Was very insightful. I'm not sure that we're doing any of that, but municipal service reviews were following the Cortese-Knox-Hertzberg Act, but there was a lot of things that were going on in different LAFCOs. And then, there was a legislative session I'll talk about next, but I appreciate hearing anything from others that attended the conference, but I thought it was very worthwhile and an excellent conference.
Any other comments from the commissioners? Commissioner Stark.
Yeah, I would like to echo what Mr. Hood said. It was absolutely apparent that the frequency and severity of natural disasters throughout the state of California, as well as probably most of the United States, are going to increase in the future, and we should understand that all jurisdictions need to be prepared. And I think what the task for LAFCOs is to make sure that the information about who governs what and what the service areas are, et cetera, probably the maps as well, is up to date and posted on the website. And that the act of making the information available is probably the primary service that we can perform in that regard. And I really think, if it's not too much work, maybe we ought to talk to the county IT or somebody and figure out how we do that effectively.
Okay. Any other comments?
Good conference. Food,
Food was, yeah. So I guess the question is, for those of you who went, was it better than the Santa Barbara County LAFCO?
Oh, no,
okay.
no.
All right, well, I'm just checking.
No,
Good.
The hosts were eclipsed by comparison.
This is pales in comparison to the Santa Barbara
Of course
conference
it does.
in 2016.
Great.
We're regarded in kind of like warm, fuzzy, legendary tones.
Right on, right on. Okay, there any public comment on the business item, information item 1?
No public comment.
Okay. The next item is information item 2. Will the clerk please read that item into the record, please?
Chair Lavanino, members of the commission, information item 2 is to receive and file a report on Cal-LAFCO legislative matters.
Okay, Mr. Hood.
Yes, I just had a list of the 24 bills that were followed by Cal-LAFCO, and this was handed out at the last session in the conference. But the bill that we supported, AB 2258 by Caballero, that had grant funding in $1.5 million for listing inactive districts and for following up on that. We supported the bill. We knew it didn't have any money in it, but it was vetoed by the governor on September 18th. But there's several different bills. The omnibus bill was passed. There's several different bills that you can look through that will be included in the next copy of the Cortese-Knox-Hertzberg Act. So I just include this for your information. I don't intend to go through every bill that was tracked, because some were not chaptered and some have differing impacts and only impact, say, one LAFCO around the state. But this is an information item, so unless you have any questions, conclude my comments.
Okay, Commissioner Sebas.
Just a quick question. Why was that vetoed? Did he give a message?
The AB 2258, the message was that it should be included in the budget bill. If there's no money in the bill, we don't. And Cal-LAFCO wanted to set up the structure for future dissolution of inactive districts. He said that it should be taken up as a whole budget discussion, not including a bill that has no money in it.
Is Cal-LAFCO going to continue that?
Yes.
Because
continue
when
that.
he took office, the first thing he wanted to do was consolidate.
Right, it has to do with the Little Hoover Commission as well, the findings in that, and setting up money to fund those studies of inactive districts. So we were disappointed.
I'd ask that staff continue monitoring that, because that's important.
Okay. See anybody having a problem with that? Good direction. Okay, are there any comments or questions from the commission? Any public comment on information item 2? None?
Nope.
Okay, we'll go to commissioner announcements and any requests for future agenda items. Does any members of the commission have anything they'd like to place on the agenda? Okay, very good. We'll now move to the executive officer's comments.
Mr. Chairman, my only comment was that on September 10th, I attended a meeting organized by the Montecito Association. Commissioner Ishkanian was present at that meeting as well. And the discussion revolved around possible future incorporation of a city, and also consolidation of districts, forming a community services district. I gave a PowerPoint that was given by a different executive officer almost exactly 10 years ago, September of 2008. But I did change a couple of things in it. So I thought the discussion was very good. It lasted for a couple of hours. They were expecting about 250 people with standing room only and room in the back for additional overflow. Shared the podium with Dave Malinex from the League of California Cities. And there were, I'd say, 50 people.
That includes the principal of the school. Supervisor.
And all the staff of all the special districts as well. Yeah, I didn't know that until later, but anyway, so those are my only comments.
Any fruits?
Yes, please.
Both Paul and that Mr. Malinex did a fantastic job of reality therapy, which we deal with in our community.
Yes.
And just real proud of him that he came and helped us communicate the facts on the ground. And I was really amazed at the gentleman from the League of Cities. I mean, he just had the kill shot on it, I think, for a while, and thank you.
Okay. Any other comments? Seeing none,
Mr. Chairman, I just
yes.
had, sorry, I
No
should have
problem.
brought this
You
up.
got it in there.
We have a meeting scheduled on November 1st.
Yes.
Which is, means my agenda packet would need to go out a week from today. So I'm thinking that if we don't have anything pressing, that we may cancel that meeting, and the following meeting would be in December 6th.
Okay,
I'll
and I
wait
just
for a
wanted to
week or
remind
so.
everybody that that meeting has changed also, the time. We changed it in
Yes,
this meeting.
we changed
So
it to 1:30.
make sure your calendars are updated. So December 6th is 1:30 p.m.
Will that be here in Santa Maria again?
No. Well, yes, it will, yeah. November would be in Santa Barbara, and this one,
Okay.
December 6th would be here.
Do we have enough information to cancel November 1st now, or are we going to wait?
I would, I think that we could safely cancel the November 1st meeting. I don't have any applications that need to be on the agenda, and since we have put off the ag policies, it might be a good thing to do.
Chair's prerogative.
Well, since Roger's not here, we'll take. Sure, let's go ahead and move unless there's anybody have any reason why we need to have a meeting November 1st. We'll adjourn to our next meeting, which will be December 6th at 1:30 in Santa Maria. Do we? Yeah. Okay. Well, don't give me any more leeway. I could be canceling a whole lot more things up here.